That was a 2. That was a 3. Ow, my tummy. Ooh. Hey, welcome back, guys. Extremely Average Man here. Today we're going to be talking about, well, not really talking. I did that in the last video. This one's going to be a build video centered on how I build my steel target stands. In the last video I kind of talked about the two common types of how you would mount your steel targets. Two main types being some kind of vertical stand like this one, and this is what the build video is going to be on. And the second common type being the chain hanger type, and this is what I'm moving away from for several reasons. Number one being, it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when your chains are going to get shot off. Reason number two is the target itself doesn't reset very well. As soon as the target's hit, it's going to be kind of moving around at whatever angle it's hit at. Reason number three, this tips over once it gets swinging, especially when you're shooting full-size rifle rounds. Once it gets swinging, it has a tendency to tip over, especially where I shoot, which is kind of uneven ground out in the mountains here, out in the west. So this build video is going to be on how I build my vertical target stands. So hope you enjoy. Come along for the ride. So your target stand is all going to revolve around the steel target itself. And the steel targets that I have, I've got 3 of them. They're all the same size. They are AR 500 rated half-inch steel targets that are 12 inches in diameter. So target aside, now let's talk about the stand itself. So the two 2x4s that you'll need, the longer one right here is going to set the height of your target, and the shorter one right here is what you're going to mount your steel, or the steel target is going to be mounted to that small 2x4, and that one's actually going to be mounted to the longer 2x4. You'll see, I mean, it'll all make sense as we go through this build process. So this longer 2x4, that's going to set the height of your target. I found a happy medium with 2'9". You can go longer if you'd like, and go shorter, but that's the size I use. And the shorter 2x4, I mean, that's going to vary depending on the width of your target. With these steel targets, 1 foot 2x4 right there works just fine. So there's kind of how it's pieced together to give you a visual. So the hardware that I use is all half-inch hardware. So those 2 carriage bolts, I think they're 6 inches long. I'll post all these dimensions as I'm editing this video. So half-inch carriage bolts, 6 inches long. And with that, you have 4 half-inch washers, 2 half-inch nuts, and those springs, again, I forget what size, I'll edit it in, but that's going to go over your carriage bolts. Now, when you screw the two 2x4s together, I use just 4 2.5-inch screws. And since I'll be welding this target, I'm going to be using rebar. Not sure how much rebar yet. I'll edit in the total length of rebar that I used. Tools involved. So I'll be using an angle grinder with a cutting wheel as well as a polishing wheel, since I'll be welding this. And speaking of, there's the welder itself that I'll be using. Also be needing a screwdriver and circular saw. Now, obviously not everybody has a welder, so no sweat. If you don't have a welder, I'll also be filming a version where I just use 2x4s. So that being said, the parts list, if you're not welding, take out the rebar, take out the grinding wheel, and take out the welder. So tools will just be screwdriver and circular saw. Alright, now if you're welding, obviously you're going to need some PPE. Sorry, I forgot to mention that earlier in the video, but here we are. Make sure you have closed-toed shoes, pants. This is my designated welding jacket. Some good leather gloves, or just good protective gloves. A way to cover your ears. You don't want a spark getting in there. So either some disposable ear plugs. I'm just going to use my hat. Pair of glasses to to wear under your welding mask, and of course your welding mask as well. So I like to think of these target stands in two pieces. The first piece is your base right here, and the second part being your stand that actually holds the target itself. Now, the first step will be focusing on the base itself, and I kind of subdivide it into two parts. You have the skeletal frame, the legs, and kind of the midsection there, and then you also have the 2x4 holder. So the first step is we'll be making the legs and that middle section right there. All right, I had to scoot back a little bit to make sure I was in frame, but let's go ahead and lay this out for you guys. We'll of course use this one I made previously as kind of a reference, but you'll lay your two longer pieces out for your legs, and then these two shorter pieces for your midsection. You're going to put those right in the middle. And the way to determine the width that I put these two midsection pieces apart is actually going to be the width of a 2x4. So once you make sure these two are in the middle, kind of squeeze it around the 2x4, and that's where you're going to weld it. Now obviously with welding, you want clean contact surfaces, and this is a very rusty rebar, so I made sure, since I already knew about where I was going to weld, I took the sanding wheel and cleaned up the midsection of the legs and also the ends of these midsection pieces. So we'll be welding them right here and also right here. Have to be perfect? Absolutely not. You're welding up a target to be shot at. I mean, these are certainly nothing to write home about. Alright, just like that, we've got our base. Now next thing we're going to do, now that we've got our base, we're going to make our 2x4 holder. It's the second step in making your base for your target stand. To spare you guys hours of welding and sanding and cutting footage, I felt the easiest way to explain this was just to take pictures as I built it and kind of explain it as I go. And of course there's a number of ways of different iterations that you could build this, but essentially all it is a little 2x4 holder to hold your stand in place. So feel free to customize it as you want, but this is just the way I built it, so take that with a grain of salt. Are these welds great? No, not really. But they're strong enough to hold a 2x4 that's going to be shot at. So really don't care about making the welds look pretty. So the first thing I did was take the frame and actually flip it 180 degrees onto its belly. And then I put a 2x4 in the middle between those two horizontal pieces. And I measured off just two smaller pieces of rebar. And I welded it right on the sides of that 2x4, because this is going to be the start of your little 2x4 cradle. I allowed for about 1 millimeter or 2 gap between the rebar and the 2x4, just to allow for a little bit of clearance in case 2x4s in the future are a little bit bigger, a little bit oddly shaped. Next, I measured the distance between those two smaller pieces I just welded. Took that measurement, cut a piece of rebar, and I welded it right in between those previous two pieces. Once you flip this back over, that'll be the base cradle for your 2x4 holder. In this photo, I actually flipped the frame back onto its normal side, and you can see I added two more of these little pieces up on top of the midsection now. It'll make sense. We're just kind of slowly creating this little cradle for the 2x4 to sit in. Our first vertical pieces, and really my first true measurement, I cut both of these at 6.5 inches, and you can see I welded them to the midsection of the frame. I added 2 more vertical pieces on the other end here. I cut those at 6 inches, and I welded them to the small little rebar pieces that are kind of welded to the midsection frame. And I'm also demonstrating that you don't want to make this, when you weld these pieces, you want to allow, a little bit of a gap for the 2x4. Not only for this one, but, again, for future 2x4s that might be a little bit thicker, or you want to allow for a little bit of variance there. A little bit of wiggle room. Quite literally. Next is our 2 top pieces. Now, I didn't really measure these out. I just made sure they were the width of the other 2 vertical pieces. I'll put some arrows here so this makes sense. And then just welded those up. And last but not least, the last 2 little pieces. I didn't really measure these out either. I just made sure they were wide enough to basically complete the cage up top, and just welded it to the other 2 pieces there. All right, when all is said and done, you should have a holder that indeed holds your 2x4. And like I've kind of said throughout this video, you want a little bit of, literal wiggle room. Just because, not every 2x4 is the same. One's going to be thicker, one may be a little bit thinner, but you just want to allow for that little bit of variance for a 2x4 to slide in no problem. There you go. Now coming up, I will also show how to do this just with 2x4s, making a stand. Basic principle is the same as the rebar build. Same thing, your target, at least the vertical, height that you're setting is going to be right in the middle. So kind of the same thing, just entrap it with the midsection pieces here and build it around it. Make sure these legs are, everything's roughly right in the middle of them. Same exact principle as the rebar one. 2x4 right in the middle. Now you could go the extra effort and screw in this 2x4 if you wanted to, just for extra stability. But up to you. Looks like it's sitting okay there. You could also take some other spare 2x4s and, you know, screw that in there also. You know, however you want to reinforce it, but, you know, that's your basic stand anyway for using 2x4s. So, however you want to do it. I like the rebar just because it's lightweight, takes up less room. Like I talked about in another video, the place I shoot's a pack in, pack out kind of place. So any target I set up, I have to, you know, walk 100, 200 yards out there and set it up. So for me, the more minimal route is better. That's why I tend to lean towards rebar. But, you know, I want to give you guys an option too, because like I said, not everyone has a welder, I understand that. And this is probably faster to do anyway, so up to you guys and your preference. Alright, now that we've got our base complete, the next step is to take our target, our hardware, our couple 2x4s, put together to create our target. Now I'll throw down a timestamp in case you want to refer back to the list of hardware and 2x4s and the size of everything and all that. So, all right. So the first step is to take your, in this case, my 1 foot or your shorter 2x4, and put it in a vise or if you have a C-clamp, basically secure it somehow, like I have here. Then I'll actually take my target and kind of just line up the holes. I like to put it right in the middle of the 2x4, centered right in the middle, and just kind of mark off your holes right there. Then in a minute, this is where I'm gonna drill right through the 2x4. Now with your drill, because these are half-inch bolts, got your half-inch drill bit right there. Now you're just gonna drill a hole through the 2x4. The trick is to do it at about a 5 degree or so angle. I'll explain why later. Does it have to be exactly 5 degrees? Not really. I mean, unless you got a drill press, might be a lot easier, but I'm not quite that fortunate yet. Believe me, it's on my list of tools, but yeah, just kind of eyeball it. 5-ish degrees. Probably a little bit more. This is really crappy wood. I got this free from a job site I was working at. But it's for a target, right? So who cares? Perfect. All right, now you're going to create your little T-post. So take your longer 2x4 and the shorter one that you just drilled through, and create a little T-post. Just put it right in the middle there, and you're going to put your 4 2.5-inch screws just right in there. You want your, let's see how to explain this. So since you drilled at an angle, you want the lower end of the angle to face out at you, and you want the higher end of the angle of the hole to face in back, if that makes sense. I hope so anyway. So the lower end is gonna face right on top. Drill your 4 holes. Just gonna go one at a time so I can at least get a screw in there. Drill needs a charge. Come on, I'll at least finish the video. Good enough. There you go, there's your T-post. I know I didn't include the drill in the tool list either at the beginning of the video. You don't need 2 drills. You could just use the drill bit in your cordless drill also and just cycle between the Phillips or whatever head you're using as well as the drill. But man, is it quicker and easier to have 2 drills, one set with your Phillips already on it and one just with to make pilot holes. So if you've got 2 drills, just use 2 drills. If not, you can, swap bits on your cordless drill or whatever. Alright, just a quick visual of the hardware that's on the target itself before we get into it. So it's going to be carriage bolts through, then you're going to slide the springs through, also the washers through. You're going to stick it through the 2x4, and then on the back side your other 2 washers and your nuts. Here we go. As mentioned, take your target, stick your carriage bolts through, leave its springs next. I gotta think about this too. Alright, that's right. Okay, so after springs, then it's the washers. Then you actually stick it through the 2x4. I see it's putting up some resistance. We'll see about that. There. Alright, and as previously mentioned, washer, nut, and back. And there you go. Now, I will tighten this probably with like a socket wrench or just a normal wrench. And as you tighten, everything's going to tighten up in here. So, and the whole reason why I drilled this canted at a 5-degree angle is so when I don't know if you can see it on frame, but when your target comes to rest, it will naturally kind of sit back, which is what you want when you're shooting steel. So then when it hits, then it's going to safely be angled down and away. So there you go. I'll tighten this up and I'll give a kind of final demonstration, I guess. Oh yeah. So you see I tightened up the back, and you want to tighten it enough where the springs compress at least a little bit. That way it'll make your target return much nicer. Another thing to note, I think I did this on my other target, but you can see there's like a little bit of a gap between the carriage bolt and the target. That's because though the carriage bolt went through okay, there's like this kind of hex shape on the back, and that square shape didn't fit through the hole of the target all the way. I think what I did on this target to make it flush, like it is here, what I did was actually took the carriage bolt off, and since this is in the shape of a square, yeah, I took a file and just shaved and rounded those ends right there until it was able to fit flush against the target and go through that hole a little bit better. Other than that, yeah, that's your target. A couple other things to note. Your 2x4s will be disposable. So I'm facing my range right here. Obviously, if you're shooting a little bit high, your 2x4 is gonna be taking some rounds. I found that, and again, I'm not the most accurate man in the world. Shooting 100 yards, that 2x4. Last time I shot with this stand, it lasted about 3 range trips, so several hundred rounds before I just replaced this, 1 foot 2x4. The longer one's also gonna, take some damage. But yeah, I mean, besides that, that's pretty cheap disposable parts. And of course your carriage bolts, over time, I mean, that's any target, those are gonna get shot off. But yeah, going to the range, carry some spare carriage bolts just in case. And then 2x4s, honestly, you could probably just replace after the range trip at home. But there you go. All right, so you guys, if you've seen a couple of my videos, you know that I stress always at least trying to do everything independently by yourself, and that includes being a handyman and creating as much as you can, because through that you grow, you learn how things work, and you get the satisfaction of making stuff yourself. So I plugged the numbers of all the material that was involved here, minus the target. So we're talking the 2x4s, the hardware, and all the rebar going into this. And I came up with about 18 feet of rebar, which, and I checked all the prices via Home Depot. So, your prices may vary a little bit here. You may be more expensive somewhere else, maybe cheaper. I cheaped out because I got the rebar for free, and I think I did pay for the 2x4. So all the rebar was free, at least for me. But with 18 feet of rebar, I noticed Home Depot sells 20 foot of rebar, so I just kind of rounded it up. That's going to run you $9.48 on a 20 foot thing of number 4 rebar. 2x4s came out to be about 3'10", so again, I rounded up to a 4 foot 2x4. That's gonna run you at $275. Yeah, I know 2x4s are no longer cheap, huh? And the hardware being the 2 nuts, 2 bolts, 4 washers, all 1/2 inch, and the bolts being 6-inch 1/2 inch bolts. And the 2 springs, I forget the exact price, so it was like 2 something, so I just rounded to 250 times 2, $5. So that came out to be about $14 in hardware. So with $275 in 2x4s, $14 in hardware, and $9.48 in rebar, this came out to be $26.25, $26.25. That's pretty cheap. Good luck getting a target stand anywhere near that. And again, you have the satisfaction and blah 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 of doing it yourself. Now, some other things you could do to it. I'll probably paint the stand at least black, because it just looks ugly with all the rust on it. Just paint over the rust. And I guess a spray can for your target too. Usually before range session, I at least coat it in bright orange or neon green just to see easier at 100 yards. But there you go, guys. Now you know how to build your own target. And of course, there's all kinds of variations you can do to making your own, but this is how I make mine, at least for now. So, thanks for watching. Hope you learned something. I hope you feel that fire inside you to go build your own. So, I'm an extremely average man, and I gotta go to bed. Get it, Rango. Get it. Get Rango.
Good boy. Get it.